take in a radical new view of how we go in the world and how we react to other people.
Hi, I'm Abigail, and today I'm going to be announcing the Spiritually Hungry theme for this podcast. I'm so excited to do it because I have not done it in a really long time. Today's Spiritually Hungry podcast theme is going to be how the world is your mirror. I think this is a great tool because it happens a lot.
Amazing.
See?
Yeah.
It does happen a lot. Okay. Have a great podcast. Bye.
Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you, Abigail. It's been a while. So as Abigail shared, today's episode is inspired by a Taylor Swift song. You know, the girls have gotten me into this. I think everybody, whether you are a Swiftie or not, is familiar with this lyric. It's me. Hi. I'm the problem.
You're not going to sing it?
It's me. Hi. I'm the problem. It's, anyway, it's catchy because it's funny, and it's funny because it's relatable and true. On a deeper level, it's about becoming consciously aware of our own shortcomings and how not being aware of it actually causes problems in our relationships, our strongest ones, really all relationships. There's another lyric from that same song. It says, I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. So it's hard, right? It's hard to see what's reflecting back at us, especially, we kind of are picky about where we get feedback from. And then even when we do, we often make it about that person. And there's many ways that we avoid the mirror, and especially, which I'm excited to talk about too, I think sometimes we see people's behavior and we think it's appalling and think, oh, I would never do that. I would never be like that. But perhaps it's because there is something inside of you that is that way. And sometimes we mirror people that we admire as well, because it's an awakening of what we have the potential to become. So let's unpack it, Michael.
Yes, I think what I hope for our listeners is to actually take in a radical new view of how we go in the world and how we react to other people. One of my favorite and truly a fundamental kabbalistic principle is that, and you have to, again, it needs to be unpacked, needs to be understood, but the great Kabbalist Rabbi says that the right way to go through life is by knowing that there is only me and the light of the Creator. Nothing else truly exists. What does that mean? If I know that I exist, we have consciousness, I know that I exist, but what happens, or what's my view of all the other people who come into my life? The good people, the bad people, the good words, the bad words, right? Mm-hmm. The annoyances and the good times. Those are all for my benefit, and most importantly, for my development, my transformation. And I often share this, but I always wonder how many people actually take that in. Because if you really accept this fundamental truth, that all that truly exists and the right way to view life is that there's me and the light of the Creator, which means that force that is there for my benefit and for my development. Well, then it must mean that anything and everything that I see is only there for a message, is only there to help me grow and to change for my benefit. Now, benefit doesn't always mean that I'm going to enjoy it, right? But it does mean that it's there to make me a better person. And too often we reject so much of the messages, of the situations that are meant to be embraced by us because they are truly for our benefit, because we say, oh, it's coming from that person who's a bad person. I don't have to listen to his words or her words. Oh, this person is behaving in such a bad way. That's for me to look at them and judge them because they're a negative person. No, silly. The only reason you're seeing any of these things, the only reason you're experiencing any of these things There's something in this to help you change, to help you grow, to help you understand yourself better.
Well, it's interesting because as I was considering what I wanted to share today, I started to think about my week, every day of last week, from last Wednesday until today. And even, the man yesterday who was yelling at me because he was trying to get out of his spot and he thought I was double parking, which I wasn't. It was a red light. And he's screaming and yelling at me. And I'm like, it's a red light. I can't go anywhere. And to be honest, he bothered me, right? But then today I was thinking, okay, well, how many times do you assume something to be true or a certain way because it looks that way from your vantage point? So I started thinking about all the ways that I did that. Thanksgiving was very recent and, we talked about family dynamics and certain behaviors and, sure, we can say, well, that person is, and especially in our day and age, we are triggered by many things. And then we label many people. This one's a narcissist. This one's a sociopath. That one has lack of emotional regulation or, was a victim. Like we go through this whole thing, but in truth, and again, I did this inventory today and I even turned to you in the last few days. I was like, oh, well, this thing I'm seeing, and I recognize that it's not a good thing. I think I might've been like that 10 years ago, or if you remember, we had this conversation. And I think, although I wasn't exactly like that, I think that now in all those years when it was hurtful to hear comments about myself, I can see, and even if my intentions were good, by the way, right? In that time, I can see that there is something in there that I actually did need to change. And I think for many reasons, right? Usually it's because we're hurt by what we hear about ourselves, especially if we're not willing to accept it, even if we desire to change, even if we are on a spiritual path. Sometimes people, when they show us things, it's not done in the kindest way or the nicest way. But if we really in that moment where we can be honest, and I think perhaps because we practice this a lot and we have these conversations, I can look at the guy in the car yesterday and today I can be like, oh, I'm absolutely that person, right? I've been that person. I can see where I am that person. I can look and say, okay, this behavior I've seen in a family member, I've had that. And to some extent, I probably still do because there is a little bit of it that still bothers me. Not to what it was, but still, right? And I can say those things because I'm willing to look at them. I think often we are not able to recognize that, right? Because we can use the example of, oh, if I see somebody who's lying, does that mean I'm a liar? If I see somebody who's stealing often, and that's disgusting, I would never steal. So let's talk about that. Where are those truths?
I want to answer that question, but I do want to just go take a little bit.
Yeah, but don't forget.
I won't because I actually had that as my and that's something I wanted to share. But I would say it's such an important point that I don't want it to be missed because it's either a radical different way to view life or not. Because it's not that, oh, this person isn't behaving like a narcissist or any other. Those external possible judgments might be completely true, but what I'd like our listeners
I'm not
to
saying
imagine
that they're not true, or they are. It doesn't matter.
But why are you experiencing them, right? So imagine, which I think is it works for me, a very powerful way. Imagine
like two things. Why are you experiencing it, and why is it upsetting you so?
Also, yes.
Why are you having the reaction?
Why? Yeah, but it starts with why are you
witnessing, experiencing
it, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you're in a theater, right? And you're the only person in the theater. Nobody else is sitting there, right? And there's 100 people in this play, right? Clearly, they know you're the only person in the theater. They are only playing for you, right? So anything and everything that happens in that hour and a half play that you're watching is only for your benefit. There might be a murder scene. There might be a stealing. There might be many, many things. This is the way we need to view our life. That it's a theater of one, me. And everybody else is there as actors for my benefit. They're all acting for me.
Do you actually have this thought often? You never shared it? I learned something new about Michael today.
Yes. I mean, this is the fundamental spiritual view of life. When I say, or Rav says that the right way to go through life is to experience it with the knowledge that there's only me and the light of the Creator. That means that everything else that is happening is the Creator showing me a play, this play or that play, for my benefit, right? If I wasn't sitting in the theater, none of the actors would be acting in whatever ways they're acting. So if you really understand life in that way, that the only reason the life play that you're experiencing and witnessing is happening is for your benefit. Then you have to ask your question is, okay, what is the lesson?
Well, here's the thing also, because you can look at the play, right? And you can say, okay, well, I understand why I'm watching this part. I actually enjoy that part, or that part was sad, but I can understand why that's there for me. But what you are positing is all of it is there for you. The parts that you understand, and also the parts that you don't understand, the parts that you enjoy and the parts that you don't, the parts that you can relate to and the parts that you're like, I would just edit this part out of the play because it makes no sense and it doesn't apply to me. Those are specifically the parts that we really need to pay most attention to.
Right. And to your question before, the Baal Shem Tov, a great Kabbalist, uses an example, right? If we accept, or at least we try to live our lives with the knowledge that everything that is coming into my view is for me to learn from, for me to grow from. What if you see things that are clearly not within you? What if you read about a murder? You put on this. So what this means, again, to be clear, you put on the TV and you watch a murder. Just recently in New York, yesterday, there was a murder in New York City. Now, neither you nor I have it within us to murder another person. Sometimes we have thoughts, right?
I don't know about you. Speak for yourself, buddy.
but certainly we would never murder another person. But he says, but there are times where we hurt somebody so badly. For example, if we've ever embarrassed somebody in public, that, he says, is a relative, a distant relative of murder. So it's not so much that when you see a murder or you hear about a murder or the play of murder comes into your view that you're supposed to say, oh, I'm a murderer. No, but you are supposed to say there must be something about my behavior, something about me that is in some way related to murdering.
Like how we disregard life in some kind of way. It might not be a bullet or a knife or death, but it's a disregard so completely of that person's essence.
Exactly.
And the same thing with lying, right? You may never lie like that, but certainly we can be dishonest. Yeah. We cannot speak up when we should. I mean, there's many layers there too.
And specifically around, there's a specific ancient teaching that when you embarrass somebody and their blood is drawn from their face, that's very much close to murder because you're drawing their blood away. So that's an example. Like you said,
does the blood rush to their face? Sometimes
it depends how a person reacts to it. But so that's murder, embarrassment, lying. I mean, we might not be liars, but there are times we don't say the whole truth, right? Or we shade the truth. Stealing, right? So we don't walk into a store and shoplift, but we might steal a minute away from somebody else. Maybe we bother them with something that we shouldn't be bothering them. So stealing
their words or their energy.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So this is the point. The point is, and again, like I said, this is a real and necessary radical shift of our view of life.
It's a beautiful way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, life is a play for one. And everything that I see is for that. Now, another important part that I often use is, what if you can't make sense of it, right? So let's say just recently this week something happened and it was upsetting. Somebody was doing something upsetting, and the first thought I have is, I'm disappointed, or why is this happening? But then the second is that I don't have to understand why this person is upsetting me in this way. But I do know that there's a spiritual concept called cleansing, right? So let's say we know there's a law of cause and effect. I did something a week ago, right? I did something that therefore should come back into my life. And I did something negative towards somebody else, and therefore something negative should come back into my life. That's the way the system works. But there's a way to cleanse ourselves of that judgment that we created. For example, if somebody embarrasses us, if somebody does something negative to us, that removes judgment from the individual. And that's the thought that I had, that I don't have to necessarily always make sense. Oh, this person is trying to upset me or doing these things that are upsetting to me because of A, B, and C. But rather, I need to be experiencing this upset. And this upset is cleansing me of some form of judgment that I don't want to come back to my life. So once again, it's for my benefit.
Well, how would you say this is related to tikkun? Kabbalistically, we talk about how everybody comes in this world with a specific point of correction or corrections, and people come in our lives to teach us that. So it's also perhaps an indication of ways we behaved in a past incarnation or have the propensity to become in this lifetime. Like when I see people do things that were not, obviously was within them, but it's not the way they were expressing themselves. It wasn't, their essence wasn't coming out like that. And then suddenly they changed so completely. I always look at it as a cautionary tale, especially like stories of ego or people behaving very badly, especially if they weren't like that.
It's very important because it's another fundamental spiritual rule that we have to know in order to make sense of the play of life. There's a lot of people talk about this concept of manifestation, right? That, how to get what you want, basically, right? And a lot of people even look to spirituality, certainly to self-help.
Secret of success type of
the secret, right? So how do I draw that which I want? And that's a very big problem if you truly understand the way the spiritual system works. Why? Like you said, there's a concept called tikkun, which means we came into the world with certain things that we need to correct, to change within our personality, our being. The true purpose of spiritual study, and certainly the true purpose of the spiritual work, is not to get what I want, but rather to become the person I need to become. And the path towards that is actually often the opposite of actually what I think I want.
Bingo. Can you say that again? Because I think that this is something that most people miss. And they really think that, well, it's what I'm supposed to get because I'm drawn to it. It's what I desire. And everything's kind of unfolding as it should. And therefore, it's a sign that it's what's destined for me.
No, absolutely not. Because, and again, like I said, this is such a misunderstanding that is relatively prevalent even in the spiritual ether today, where people think the purpose of spiritual work or spirituality or self-help certainly is I want to be A, B, and C, or I want these things, and this is my path to achieving that. That's not real spiritual study. That's not real spiritual. The real purpose of spiritual work, the real purpose is actually to become the person that I'm meant to become. Now, I use the example, you and I very much into, saunas and cold plunges, right? Now, there are people who would hate sitting, and I know many people who hate sitting in a sauna for 25 minutes, a half hour. I know people who'd be, as a matter of fact, where we go, there's a lot of people who hate going to the cold plunge, right?
They think they hate it.
Now, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people hate it.
They don't know yet that they really love it.
Yes. Point being, we are people who actually get great pleasure out of being in a 200-degree sauna.
Well, we get great pleasure in going against our body's desires.
Right, but I'm not trying to make a spiritual point.
No, I'm saying
trying to relate to it.
Okay, I'm just saying the challenge of it in and of itself is part of the thrill for me.
Right,
anyway.
but and we also enjoy 5 minutes in 44-degree water. For other people, that would be terrible. If you have forced them to do that, would be torture. Now, I'm just using it as an example. I'm not necessarily saying, although the science is very strong to try to get everybody in the world. It's a different episode. But my point is, imagine that's the world, that's life. Life is a sauna and a cold plunge. And if you don't get to a place where you actually enjoy the sauna and the cold plunge, you're going to be going through life saying, oh my God, how can I create a world where there are no saunas or cold plunges? Well, that's not actually the purpose of life. The purpose of life is not to remove all the saunas and cold plunges for those who don't enjoy them. Is to become a person who actually enjoys the heat of the sauna and enjoys the cold of the cold plunge. I want to make sure that this is clear to our listeners. My point, there might have been a rough analogy, but the point is that the way I view the purpose of my life, even as I am today, and I've been studying this for over 40 years, and I've been practicing for over 40 years, I know that if somebody is upsetting me, if a situation is disappointing me, it is not my purpose is not to change necessarily the situation, although at times there's a time for that. But how do I become a person who is not disappointed in that situation, who is not upset in that situation? And that's the real purpose of the spiritual work. So when other people come into our lives, this play of for one, as we said before, you take it all in. Not because, oh, I'm so happy this person is embarrassing me. Oh, I'm so happy this person is yelling at me. No, but I know that these experiences, because it's all a play just for me, are to get me to be the person that I'm meant to be, right? And if I am upset, if I'm disappointed, it's an indication, not that things necessarily have to change, but that I have to change. And therefore, everything and everybody that comes into my life is either mirroring something that I need to learn or bringing into my reality an experience that I need to have in order to change and to grow and to become the person that I need to become.
Okay, so a few things. You were saying that people often chase different things and they don't really focus on who they're supposed to become. And if they were focused on that, then they would be able to see all of these challenges as a definite next piece in the puzzle.
And they might not even want this thing that they think they want.
Right. So, but most are blind to that because they see the thing that they want and that all those doors seem to be opening for them. They go through them, never pausing to say, am I becoming who I'm supposed to become? Right. It becomes a tricky kind of.
Well, that's a whole other conversation, right? You're saying people, and we've seen this often where people get certain things and what they don't realize is that those things are both a blessing and a test.
Or perhaps a curse.
Well, it's a curse if they don't pass the test.
Exactly.
No, and this is really true. You know, there's an ancient conversation around, you know, what's more challenging, the curse of poverty or the curse of wealth, right? Because both of them are a test. And this goes back to what we were saying before. If you understand life, its true purpose, every second of every single day is for me to be becoming a better version of myself. Then even the blessings, while you need to embrace them and appreciate them, you also have to view, well, what is the test here for me? Is my ego going to grow from wealth? Is my ego going to grow from success? And so on and so forth. As I said, I think this is a very different view of life than even many spiritually pursuing people have. That there is never a moment when my change doesn't need to continue. And then you're right. Sometimes, even when the doors open or the blessings come, if my view of them is not, oh, there's a test in here. Am I going to continue growing and changing, or am I going to fall to my ego? Then it can become a curse, of course. So
how do you decipher what you see, right? What's being reflected? So the good is when you interact with someone and you maybe even admire them or you have an affinity with them, they're mirroring something that you value, right? So it's mirroring really what you have the potential of what you can be. On the other hand, the bad is, let's say you have a friend who crosses every boundary. She oversteps. She relies on you to do things that you should never do. And you don't want to be her friend, yet you keep jumping over hoops to be there for her. And that can be an awakening to say, okay, how do I need to create more boundaries in my own life, right? Like that thing that bothers you in your friend. So for instance, I had a relationship with somebody for a very long time, and her behavior bothered me very often. And I couldn't understand what I was supposed to learn from it. And I would see sometimes just she would be withholding or a little bit lazy. And it's a quality I don't like in people. But I had this real revelation quite recently because I finally, after so many years, got to the other side of it. And I think part of the issue wasn't just a lack of appreciation on my part, just for however she does show up, but that I work myself to the bone, right? And I often feel exhausted and in need of help. Then I would look at that behavior and it would bother me. So why did it bother me? Because maybe I need to be a little, not lazy, but a little bit nicer to myself in that regard, right? So we see things in front of us for so many different reasons. It's not always obvious, right? So again, sometimes it's what we want to become. Other times it's what we need to stop being. And we see the opposite in somebody else and it will aggravate us. We won't get it. We'll think, oh, I just don't like that quality in a person. When in reality, we are possessing a quality that is extremely in the other direction. That's not really serving us.
Absolutely. My father's teacher said to him what I think, again, is a fundamental and important understanding about really a way to test yourself whether you're really being spiritual. He said, if you're on a true spiritual path, then whatever you're studying, whatever you're experiencing, whatever is coming into your life, you're taking it inward, right? How can I change? How do I need to grow? If you're looking outward and judging another person, that's one of the clearest indication that you are not on a proper spiritual path. Because, and what I often like to say, there are ways for us to test whether we're actually progressing or regressing in our spiritual path. Ask yourself the question. Since I began studying, since I started doing my spiritual work, am I more looking inward, or am I still looking outward? Or worse, am I looking outward even more? The ultimate spiritual being,
outward,
meaning a judging. Oh, why is he doing that? Why is she doing that? The ultimate spiritual being has no time to be looking outward and judging, because they're so focused on their own development and transformation. Because that's the way they view the purpose of their lives. They don't have the time to waste to be judging and looking outward. And anything that they do see is only, as we said before, used as a way to facilitate my own transformation, my own way of looking inward in one way or the other.
Right. And even if those who are further on their spiritual path, and let's say they don't really judge as much, but if it bothers you, right? If you are so turned off by that person, it's triggering to you. Again, it's the same indication. I was actually reading, somebody was sharing that they loved the show Sex and the City and they hated the character Miranda. And as the episodes went on, they hated her more and more. And then one day she realized, oh my God, I'm Miranda. What bothers me, she's a complainer, she's a nagger, she's this, she's that. She's like, I am that person. I'm completely that person. But for like years, she didn't realize it until she finally had that epiphany. So it's more like that. And it's going to be those hardest relationships. It's going to be your brother, your sister, maybe your mother, your mother-in-law. What is it that you just can't forgive, let go of, keep harping on, right? Has that in you in some way?
Absolutely. There's actually, so to be clear, there's two ways, if you accept this way of viewing life, that you need to take in what's happening, right? So it's either I have an understanding now of what this person does and how parts of that or elements of that are within me and I need to change. And the other part, like we said, is when you simply accept that whatever difficulty this person is bringing into my life, or this situation is bringing into my life, is for my benefit, even if I can't see it. And there's really an ancient story that really, I think, illustrates this. Can I share?
Yeah, I'm actually excited because you have this look in, like I can tell when you're excited to tell.
Yeah, I love the story. So the story is about a great Kabbalist, and we know that the Kabbalists were able to understand the language of trees. When the trees move, the leaves are actually speaking, giving messages. When the birds fly, they actually are giving messages. So there were Kabbalists who were able to understand the language of trees, who were able to understand the language of animals, of birds.
What's funny, like any movie you watch, right? Like often I'll watch movies, I'm like, oh, that's a really creative thought. And then in the end, it's actually based on a truth that we all probably could understand animals and trees. And
we understand Miles.
We lost that. Definitely. Miles is super clear about how he feels about everything. And then we kind of lose that through time, I think. But yeah, anyway.
So this man comes to the Kabbalah and says, I want you to teach me the language of the animals. And the language of trees. And the Kabbalah says, it really isn't for everybody to learn. I really don't think you should study. And the guy is persistent day after day after day after day after day. And the Kabbalah says, okay. After a few weeks of badgering him, he says, I'll teach you. And he teaches him the language of trees, the language of birds, the language of animals. And one day, the man who has now learned the language of the natural world is sitting at home and he hears the trees outside. And they're saying, there's a storm coming and this man's horses are going to be hurt by the winds and the falling trees. So he runs outside to where his horses are, and he puts them in a different place and he ties them up so they won't get hurt. And truly a storm comes in that night, and had they been out where they were supposed to be, they would have been hurt, maybe even killed.
I haven't heard the story before. You're full of new information tonight.
Thank you. I think you have, but it's okay. A few weeks later.
Maybe the way you're telling it tonight is special.
Yes. A few weeks later, he hears the birds chirping outside. And the birds are saying that this person's fields, and he was a very, he had fields. And so this person's fields is going to be a lightning storm, and it's going to hit his fields and it's going to burn up all of his crops. So he stays up all night, ready with his buckets of water, and he sees in the middle of the night the lightning hit, as the fire starts. He runs with his bucket and he pours it out, saves his crops. A few months later, he hears the animals outside his house talking, and they're saying the owner is going to die. And now he doesn't know what to do with that information. So he runs back to the Kabbalist. He says, what do I do? What do I do? I heard the animals speaking that they're saying that he's going to die. And the Kabbalist looks at him and says, you don't understand. You had judgment hovering over you. Says, it was supposed to be removed by your horses dying, but you stopped that. Then that judgment was supposed to be removed by your crops burning.
Such a good story.
And you stopped that. Now the only thing left to do is for that judgment to come for you. And this is the understanding.
Such a good story. I hadn't heard that one.
When you understand that everything that comes into our life is for our benefit, then you don't get upset when that person yells at you. And you don't get upset when that person embarrasses you, because it's a play for me. It's what I need. Sometimes in ways that I see and learn, and sometimes in ways that I can't understand, but I know that it's for my benefit.
It reminds me of Abigail. It was her favorite story when it was Pinkalicious, a whole series of books. And one of the lines in it is, you get what you get and you can't get upset. And she would walk around saying that all the time, but actually it's a good reminder, That's
a great reminder. That should be the title of that should be the title of this episode. Get what you get and you don't get upset. Because it's for your benefit.
Okay, I have one last question. How would one stay curious about what others see in them? Because we talk a lot about you shouldn't care what people think about you, look inward, not outward, and all of that is true. We're also saying, though, everybody is our mirror. So how do you stay curious about what is expressed to you?
I think you simply do. I'll share with you an interesting story. Miriam, my daughter.
Our daughter, sweetie.
Oh, right. She is our daughter. Yes. Oh, oops. I almost let the family secret out. Okay.
No, I know you're going to.
So Miriam, our daughter.
That's somebody being adopted? Is that where you're going? I know your brain.
That's
which is not true either.
Which is not true. Yeah. But it's a family joke we make. So she was talking to me recently. She said, because, people, you don't really know people see you. In my mind, I'm a sort of, silly person, right? It's certainly at home, I'm silly with a kid. Like, I don't take myself too seriously. And then Miriam says, nobody knows you like that, right? They know you as, somebody giving me a lecture, serious and all that. And it's very funny because that's not at all the way I view myself. But I know probably a lot of people do view me like that.
Very much so.
Yeah, so I am very curious about how sometimes it's just interesting. Sometimes I get, there's going to be something in there to learn. And I think
it's that openness though. Like I can either, you do an inventory. Does this sound true? Does it not? What parts can I take? Which parts really hurt? Why do they hurt? Ask a series of questions. I do that often. Just before we recorded, my mom called me. I mentioned on a talk we had the other day that somebody I went to high school with just overdosed on Thanksgiving. And she went to the funeral and she saw a bunch of my other friends from high school and they recognized her and she's like, oh, they pulled up pictures on their phone that they had of you from high school. I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't even know what they're looking at. And then I had the thought, I was like, oh, I guess that's the version of me they know, right? They're still looking at, they have those pictures in their phone. And I think if I saw those pictures, I'd be like, oh my God, I don't even remember her. You know what I mean? So it's interesting because that's all an illusion. However, I guess if it's in your movie, if it's in front of you, then it's important to take pause and to do inventory, not to be busy with, because we often are like, oh, we read this thing on Instagram or whatever. And what did they think? That's not what we're talking about, because that's just a judgment and it's not really based on anything. But if, like I said, even the guy that was yelling at me yesterday, really got out of his car, was ready to be in my face. And I was like, it's red. But he bothered me. Why did he bother me? I am him and he is me. That's Absolutely. The reality.
Life is a play for one.
Yeah.
Again, I really hope this is, I think, amongst the most important radical spiritual transformations in our consciousness. And I really hope that our listeners are inspired at least to begin the work to try to live life in this way, because otherwise we're going to miss 90% of the messages and transformation that we're supposed to be experiencing in life to become the better version of ourselves that we're meant to become.
And it will keep coming.
Also.
It will come through the next person or the next one. It doesn't go.
So I'd like to share a letter from one of our listeners. This is from Gela. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
I don't think so. Is it?
Gela?
I have no idea. I'm not reading it.
I'm sorry. Well, Gela, if that's not how your name is pronounced, I apologize. Hello, Mike, Monica, and Michael. I always walk away from your podcast feeling at peace and with a deeper appreciation for the journey I am on and the people around me. Today was no exception. Everything you shared resonated deeply with me. I'm also happy to share that thankfully I realized early on, when my kids were young, that they chose us and what a blessing it is to have them. I've come to understand that my most important role as a mother is to provide for them and shower them with love. Do I always do a great job? Probably not, but I am trying. Monica, troha is a word. Those of you who don't remember, in a previous podcast, Monica mentioned that her dad in later years and with dementia and Alzheimer's, he would often just say that word troha, which Monica had no idea, I guess, what it meant.
Well, I really appreciate this letter already without even hearing the rest of it so far.
Troha is a word in Ukrainian and other Slavic languages meaning a little bit or a small amount. When my grandfather was very sick, he often spoke only Yiddish instead of our shared language, Russian. I wonder if your father was trying to tell you something, but could only remember this word in a language you didn't understand.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your incredible insights and for always creating a space for reflection. Warm regards, Gela.
Okay, now I'm thinking, what was my dad trying to tell me? A little bit? A little bit of what?
Hey, just a little bit is enough.
Oh, I don't know. I got to think about this.
Yeah. So thank you. And I really hope I got your name right. If not, please let us know and I'll correct it in the next podcast. But this is the right time to remind all of our listeners, if you enjoy this podcast and you want to share it, go to Apple Podcasts, write 5-star reviews, share it with everybody you know, tell them how amazing it is, and continue to send us your letters, comments, stories, and I guess additions. Monica is now deep in thought because of.
I am. I'm like, oh my God, my dad just came back to tell me something.
You want, absolutely, no coincidences. Letters, emails with all of your questions, comments, stories, topic ideas to Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. All of you, we read all of your emails. They inspire us and they inspire our listeners.
Well, now I'm thinking about Aretha Franklin. Ooh, ain't no doing wrong, just a little bit. Ooh, just a little bit.
Maybe.
All right,
I
folks.
trust you. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Stay spiritually hungry. Try.